Good morning, everyone. I am Matt Clark with Veritas CFO, and today we're excited to have Charles Tarbutton on our podcast. Charles is the treasurer of B-H Transfer Company, a 250 fleet trucking company based in Sandersville. He and his family also have a long tradition in the state, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about that too. So good morning, Charles. How you doing today?
I'm great, Matt. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. And how's the year going for you? And are you ready for it to be over?
Well, 2020 has certainly been for everyone, no matter what you're involved in. It's been an unprecedented year. It's been a year full of a lot of challenges. Those who have been able to adapt during that period of time are still standing, and fortunately we have been able to adapt and roll with the punches and make the necessary changes to continue to operate through this, as so many trucking companies have. Our people are frontline employees, and they have been at work every day since the pandemic has begun. And knock on wood, we've been pretty lucky in keeping our people healthy during this period of time, and we haven't had a whole lot of impacts on service as a result of that. But the safety and health of our people is primary, and so far we're pleased that we've been able to keep most of our folks COVID free during this period. And when we look back on 2020, certainly has been a challenging year in so many ways, but we feel like we've had a good year. Business has been down during the summer a bit, but it has certainly been strong the last several months with a surge in freight. And we're excited about 2021. Our sort of in channel checks with our customers, they feel like 2021 will be a good year. It'll be a sort of a continuation of what we're seeing in the fourth quarter. So we're excited about the possibilities.
Yeah, that's great to hear that your customers are looking forward to a good 2021. Hopefully that runs over into the overall economy, and this, whether you call it U or V or K-shaped recovery, we all get going back in the upward positive direction for sure.
For sure, we certainly hope so. A good bit of our business is in the minerals that we handle, particularly in our tank business, is related ultimately to construction.
Okay.
And that that area of the economy continues to strengthen, and it looks like the forecast for 2021 remains strong in the construction segment of our economy.
Sure. It's good to hear too. So you talked about business being down a little bit during the summertime. So I think most of the general trucking, general freight, truckload, I think saw a drop off in the early part of the year, spring, maybe early summer, but then certainly it's come back with a vengeance. Did you guys have the same kind of timeline, or was yours, pushed out?
I would say that our timeline was maybe a little later. Our volumes stayed pretty steady through about Memorial Day, and then after that, our customers were slow for June and July into about the middle of August, and things started to improve. And by the really sort of week to week, by the end of October, they were back at pre-pandemic volumes.
Yeah, it's getting great to hear for you for your business. And as we were just talking about before we started the call, is it B-H Transfer has been around for a long time, family-owned business too. You got some long-term relationships with customers, and so I think it's where the family-owned and your culture with the long-standing relationship with customers certainly helps out, and you don't have customers jumping ship or trying to beat you up on rates when is in a down cycle.
Right. So we will celebrate our 50th year of operations next year in 2021. Have been a family-owned business since the inception of the company, and many of our customers, we have had long standing strategic relationships with those customers, and so they, in addition to being customers, in a lot of instances, we have real close personal relationships with the people we've worked with over many years, and we look on them. Our family culture extends to all of our employees and contractors and to our customers. So I mean, it's our relationships both with our drivers and our customers and all of our stakeholders is based on trust and really trying to serve their needs, and at the same time, in reverse, they are knowledgeable of what we need to accomplish, and they have been supportive of us as well. So it's a real long-term look on relationships.
Sure, yeah. So speaking of family culture, I know your family's got a long history in the state. Can you share with us some of the interesting aspects from your family?
Well, we've been blessed to call Georgia home for a long time, and this is a great state to do business. And we've been very fortunate, and we've been fortunate to be in a part of the state that has been transportation intensive. And so we have a long multi-generational history in transportation in Georgia, and that spans both the shortline railroad industry and the trucking industry, and so my grandfather was in the railroad business, both with as an owner of Sandersville Railroad and at one time the president of the Central of Georgia Railroad, and then my father and my uncle followed him in terms of their operation and ownership of Sandersville Railroad. And I had the pleasure to work with Sandersville Railroad about 27 years until we basically divided the companies, and my side of the family wound up in the trucking business, and my cousins in the railroad business, which has been a good, I think a very good move for both parties. But we still work closely with Sandersville Railroad, trying to serve some joint customers, and it's been a good ride.
Yeah, it's sounds like it. So you're 27 years in the Shortline Railroad. Don't hear much about short lines. Hear a lot about the Class 1 railroads. But one, and I think I mentioned to this, I met listened to one of your relatives down at the state capitol at the Georgia Commission on Freight and Logistics, and got more exposure to the aspects of the shortline business. But can you talk about that?
Sure, I'd be happy
business,
to.
kind of some differences between the short lines and the Class 1s?
So I left the industry in 2015, but I was very involved with it up until then. I'm probably not quite as current as I was then, but there are probably on the neighborhood of between 500 and 600 short lines in the United States. In Georgia, there are a couple of dozen, maybe a few more than that. They are essential. They're an essential part of the rail industry. They generally operate on lighter density lines that the Class 1s post-Staggers Act in the early 80s just basically found they were uneconomic to operate, and with a lower cost structure in the Class 3, the short line operating environment, they can tailor service and be more competitive serving those light density markets than the Class 1 operators previously were able to do. So in many instances, what you find is that the short line operators will tailor transportation service for specific customers, and instead of a sort of a one size bulk product or service that you might get from a class one railroad. The class ones are critical. Obviously the rail industry can't operate without them, but they really are run high density lines with enormous volumes between very active origin and destination pairs. And the short lines provide more of a retail type transportation service in sort of a first mile, last mile type environment for their shippers.
Yeah, it's an interesting model, and I didn't realize there were so many across the U.S. and in Georgia also. Again, just don't seem to get a whole lot of press, and unless you're just in the industry, all you hear about most are the class ones. When we were at the Georgia Motor Trucking Association, we were talking. So it's kind of a unique model with a limited number of customers for the short lines. Is that right?
That's right. They are, short lines by their nature are can be geographically concentrated, and oftentimes they can be commodity concentrated by virtue of the fact of the geography they serve. So the more limited the geography, oftentimes the more limited the commodity concentration.
Right. Yeah, interesting model. Appreciate you sharing with that. So, now turning to the trucking business. So you've been in the trucking business since roughly 2015. Is that what you
yeah,
said?
So I've been around the trucking business,
right,
virtually my whole life, but I haven't actually worked in the trucking industry until 2015. So I'm about a little over 5 years in.
Got it. So on the trucking side, the B-H Transfer side, can you tell us more about that business? I think you said you've been going on 50 years being in business. Obviously a long history, but and we touched on the fleet, about 250 trucks. You mentioned some of the products that you're hauling, but again, a little more detail, maybe the regional scope that you serve too.
We grew up primarily as a trucker serving the kaolin industry in Middle Georgia. So we have a long history handling industrial minerals, with non-hazardous industrial minerals in bulk and in containers. In addition to that, we have several locations in Georgia and one over in Alabama that again is serving an industrial mineral application there. But about I would say about a little over 40% of our business is tank freight, and about 60% is containerized freight. And we have served a number of ports, but I would tell you that we primarily right now our business concentrates our intermodal business concentrates around the port of Savannah, just because that's where our customers want to go.
Right.
So if they wind up deciding they want to go to Charleston or Jacksonville or Mobile, we'll certainly follow them there. But right now it's really concentrated around Savannah.
Yeah. So have you guys, the port of Savannah has been on fire the past couple of years with freight coming through there. I guess thinking more about general freight, truckload kind of freight. But you guys have experienced the similar increases for the minerals, coming into or out of Savannah, like.
Well, so there are puts and takes in in the minerals business, depending on the applications. But yes, we've tried to grow as the Port of Savannah has grown, and we have we're trying to grow our exposure to the import trade because that's a big growth area for the Port of Savannah. Certainly, as the ocean shipping trade lanes change and services are added at Savannah, there are more and more imports there, and so we're working every day to try to balance our book of business, with imports and exports.
Sure.
But our business grew up with Georgia exporters.
Right. Understood. So we talked about roughly 250 trucks. It's a large fleet and a large pool of drivers to manage too. So when we were at the Georgia Motor Trucking Association, some of the topics discussed there related around truck parking and the driver shortage and then the insurance cost. Do you guys have similar challenges, and how are you addressing those?
In addressing those, first, I would tell you that truck parking is an enormous challenge for the trucking industry. Fortunately, the overwhelming majority of our drivers are home every night. And as a result of that, obviously, truck parking is less of an issue for our drivers as a result of being home at night. For those that are out on the road, and we do have a cadre of drivers that prefer over the road routes. It's a challenge, and it takes a lot of planning, and there is a lot fewer spaces than there are trucks looking for them, and so that remains a challenge. And the state of Georgia is really forward looking, and our Department of Transportation at the state level is looking at solutions in the truck parking area, and we're hopeful that there's maybe a public-private solution to that in the future based on their research.
Right. Yeah, and so good point. One of the Capitol, one of the Commission on Freight and Logistics topics was about truck parking, and the DOT commissioner was there too, talking about it, and some of the legislators were talking about these public-private partnerships, and trying to figure out how that's going to work, and the funding on the state side, which is always a discussion topic and a challenge in itself too. But so hopefully the state and the DOT also can come up with some ideas to help you guys.
They want to be part of the solution, and they need to be part of the solution, and with the state driving it and including private business in it as well. I'm hopeful that in the travel center world that that'll be a part of that solution. You mentioned driver retention and recruitment. Obviously, everybody in the trucking industry, that's probably their number one challenge is recruiting drivers. Certainly with the surge of freight that is taking place now, it becomes it exacerbates that challenge. There are a number of things that continue to add to the challenge, and COVID has had negative impacts on the driver pool. I think smaller carriers have left the market, whether it was due to COVID or increases in insurance premiums in a very hard insurance market. So that transition can dislocate drivers. The drug clearinghouse has there's been about 30,000 drivers who have appear to have left the industry. The drug clearinghouse obviously is a great step forward in terms of safety and compliance, and we very much support it. But it has had a measurable impact on people leaving the national driver pool. Excuse me. Also, you talk about the insurance markets. Those are that has been a tough a tough environment for all carriers. I know that many carriers are operating with reduced limits at the same or higher premium costs than they were, say, 3 or 4 years ago. And that is largely driven by enormous underwriting losses in the insurance industry, in the transportation segment of the insurance industry. There are any number of judicial hellholes in a number of states that are driving these astronomical verdicts, including in Georgia. And, the only reasonable solution to that ultimately will be tort reform at the state level.
Yeah, and I remember folks at GMTA talking about how tort reforms been in the legislature at least for a little while now, but if something significant happens and when, because that's the $64,000 question.
Even people in the trucking industry who generally are getting sued by people who advertise on billboards,
right,
believe in a balanced legal system. But there are a number of things that take place in the legal process in various states that unbalance that playing field in favor of trial lawyers.
Sure. So just talking about the insurance and the risk, how are you guys managing that? Are you guys self-insured, or have you gone to a captive, or are you in the traditional markets? Or?
Well, we do some of both. We have been a member of a captive for 16, 17 years.
Okay.
And even though we have been a member of the captive, we have sort of followed the trends in insurance, have been back in the private markets, but we're back active in the captive now. We believe that it is smoothing out, sort of the premium shocks,
right?
At least for that first layer of coverage. And then we're in the private market for our excess layers. And that's where so much of the inflation has occurred, is in the excess markets.
Right. Yeah, I've seen the shift too in the move from the traditional private markets over to captives, and smaller pools, more safety conscious, risk.
Right. So, our experience in the captive world has been that, aside from the premiums and the potential savings in premiums and the potential to have some of those premium dollars returned to you in the event of less losses than expected, we have found that the risk management side of the captive world has been really, really valuable. The risk control portion, the claims handling, the best practices that come out of that, we have really found a lot of value in that. And we feel like we operate, safety is our number one priority. And we feel like we operate a safer company by virtue of our membership in the captive and having access to best practices, not only of our the insurance companies that we work with, but by virtue of the best practices we learn from the other members in the captive. Right. So it's been long term. It's been a very good experience, and we feel like we're a much safer company as a result of it.
Yeah, I can understand that too. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to a fellow CFO. So talk some finance shop. I'm always interested in some of the KPIs that CFOs are tracking in the trucking business. Can you share some of the metrics that
Well,
you're measuring?
I'll tell
And
you, you know, our philosophy at B-H Transfer is that all of us that are in a non-driver role are working to support the drivers.
okay,
And so one of the most important things we watch is on a ongoing basis is driver earnings.
okay,
And so we're constantly monitoring that because we understand that our ability to serve our customers is only as good as our drivers feel about their work experience here. So we are very intentional about trying to help our drivers be as successful as they can, to provide them with the best health and retirement benefits that we can afford to give them, and we think ours are as good as anybody's, and to give them an experience inside the company, the personal experience, the personal touch, to want to call this place home. And we've been fortunate in a lot of respects. There's, our turnover is far lower than the industry average, but it's higher than we want it to be. And but that in terms of KPIs, we keep a close eye on driver earnings, and we're trying to do things operationally in dispatch that will give them opportunities to make more money all the time, understanding and always complying with hours of service limitations.
sure. Yeah, I totally understand that. Any other on the kind of operating finance side, rate per miles, or miles per tractor per week, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we're looking at that. I mean, we don't look as hard at revenue because so much of revenue, particularly during high fuel prices, is impacted by fuel surcharges. So
Okay, sure.
we're really looking at base freight revenue, and to the degree that exceptional charges are based on services we provide, that's something that we keep a close eye on too.
Yep.
So we are monitoring our our revenue per loaded mile, revenue per hub mile.
Okay.
Those are things we are keeping a close eye on. Absolutely, we're looking at we're always watching the utilization of our tractor fleet. We want to do things, whether it's in dispatch or working with drivers to increase the loaded miles, and we watch our empty miles as a percent of the whole, and we do we've got room to improve there, but we feel like we do a pretty good job of trying to squeeze empty miles out.
Right. Yeah.
For a business that's generally loaded out and empty back.
Right. Good point. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that too, and appreciate you taking the time to talk today. So before we wrap up, one other topic discussed at the GMPA conference was kind of the future of the trucking industry, and one of the big topics there is driverless or our driverless trucks. What's your thoughts on driverless trucks, and do you ever see B-H Transfer with a driverless truck?
Well, ever is a long time. I would say that we're not planning for it at this point. It's been interesting to watch different states jockey for the driverless vehicle industry as an economic development tool. And so there's a patchwork of state regulations and incentives where it seems to, the federal government has not caught up. The safety related agencies aren't there, and the insurance companies are not there.
Yeah.
Certainly a lot of that driverless technology has driven the adoption of safety technology in the existing trucks, whether that's sensors that aid in collision avoidance or lane departure warnings, and we try to deploy that technology on our trucks. I don't think we have any of our company-owned trucks that don't have collision avoidance on them, and that has dramatically reduced the amount of the rear-end collisions that we've experienced with our company trucks. So there are already significant improvements in safety in the trucking industry as related to the technologies that have spun out of the quest for driverless trucks. Will it happen? Certainly. And there are certain captive motor carrier or trucking applications, whether it's on a port terminal facility or something like that, a bus route, that I think will be adopted sooner than probably in the commercial over-the-road application. I sort of see it like the airline industry. You have pilots that take off and land, but it's on autopilot for most of the flight. And my guess is you will continue to see more and more driver-assisted trucks where the driver is less and less engaged in every manipulation of the vehicle, but is still there to override or to do the sort of the first mile, last mile driving that a human skill is really needed for.
Right. That's an interesting comparison about the planes and the autopilot. I hadn't thought about it that way, but right, there's still two pilots in the cockpit of a plane, even though once they get it up and running, it's on autopilot. So I guess you don't think I have to be worried about passing a B-H transfer truck driving down Highway 15 in Sandersville, a driverless truck anytime soon. Then,
well, Matt, you're a young man, but I don't think you're going to have to worry about it anytime soon. But I won't say it won't happen one day.
Right. Understood.
We're not actively planning for it at this point.
Got it. Understood. Well, again, appreciate you taking the time today, Charles. This has been great. Really appreciate your time talking with us today, and thanks for joining us today.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you too, Charles. And that wraps up our show for today. Really hope you enjoyed our talk, and please let us know any comments and your feedback you have below, and have a great weekend.